it's nothing bad. It's just one of those days where you're like, oh, I'll have time for this and this and this. And then you're like, oh, no, I don't have time for any of that.
Yeah. That's how this whole week is. I feel like I spent like an hour yesterday just doing nothing but planning my to-do lists and like what time I'm going to try and do everything. All that good stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I can imagine getting ready to launch an album and all that is crazy. I mean, what is your... Because it's been like a couple of years since we talked. I feel like we have these little check-ins, which I love doing every few years or so. But like, I was wondering for you at this point, like, what is, even outside of like album shit, we'll get into all that, but like, what is life like for you at this point? Like, does it still feel like the grind of like years past, you know, when you were younger and trying to make it and just doing everything? Is it more in like phases at this point, or does it still just feel like a constant stream of shit coming at you?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Have you seen that meme that's like, after next week, like being an adult is just saying after next week, things should slow down until you die, basically. It kind of feels like that, where I'm like, oh, I have a lot of stuff coming up, but like in a couple of weeks it chills out and then it just more stuff piles up. But yeah, it kind of feels like the same grind in a way, but just it's the same amount of grinding I feel like I'm doing, and I'm staying super busy, but it's sort of different. I felt like when, 2016, 17, 18, 19, kind of pre-COVID, I was just going from like 0 to 100 and doing like 150 shows a year, just crazy amount of traveling and doing events and things like that. And I hadn't really done like an album or thought too much into like, I don't know, just more conceptual type music and all that kind of stuff. So I felt like I was nonstop on the road doing shows, merchandise, things like that. And now I feel like I think I expanded so quickly and just got, tour managers and lighting people and video people and merch teams and lawyers and, agents and just everybody. There's so many people. It just became like too much as to try and like micromanage in a way. And sort of, I feel like I've over the last 2-3 years been really trying to just be involved with every little section of the business rather than trying to turn it over to someone and have them handle it and figure it out and then come back and give me feedback. And then I send it back. And like, it just became this game of telephone with a million different people that I felt like I couldn't manage everything properly. And so, this year I've just been, getting a new business manager, kind of like onboarding them, being way more involved with like that whole process of everything, budgeting everything really well. I think there was a lot of little things like merchandise and stuff like that sort of just existed. And I kind of knew what was going on with it, but I didn't really like track the numbers and see what items were selling well and what was the most effective way to do everything. And so I feel like I've been really trying to just get down into the nuts and bolts of like my business and just make sure everything's being executed well, money's being spent when it needs to be spent. And, same thing, even, now I'm doing this album, like making visuals and things like that. I felt like the more time and effort I put into the, prompt or information that I'm giving to the people who are making the visuals, the better they're going to come back. I know that. I've learned that a million times. Like, they're expensive to make. And there's plenty of times where I say, here's a page worth of information about what I want it. And then I get it back and it's 50% done. And I'm like, I don't know if I love this, Yeah, and I'm like, man, if I had spent more time, maybe saying exactly what I wanted and being more specific about this is the exact budget, this is the exact asset, I want it to be this, then I feel like everything will just be more efficient, but the money will be spent better. They'll be wasting less time. Everything's a little bit. So just in every department, I feel like I've been going through and really trying to just think about the most efficient way to do it. And, decisions that I can be involved in that are going to make everyone's life easier, even if it just takes an extra 5-10 minutes of my day. But yeah, it's kind of turned into like, I'm just on calls all day, every day. like this morning, it's like, been trying to get my workouts in and like, be a little bit more conscious of my health, but it's like, did the gym 8 a.m. this morning and came back and had like a little bit of food. I got a sick girlfriend, like I was saying, made some breakfast, and then had a call with, a tour manager about just travels and booking all the stuff coming up for Europe and EDC and just logistics, all this kind of stuff. And then I had like a team call with our business manager to review, all the personnel that we have booked for the next 3 months and who's, on what shows and whether we think it makes sense and what social media team we're going to have at which events and who, just budgeting really and planning and doing all that kind of stuff. And then, we have like, then this call for a bit. And then I got a creative call with the team to discuss the assets for the EDC show and the new album and like, doing exactly what I was talking about, making sure I'm giving really specific details because we're creating all those assets right now. And then I have a catch-up call with my agent at 3:00 to discuss the fall tour and like, final things for Europe and for the July weekend and trying to get all that. And then I have like need to work on music at like 4:00 after that and like finish up this Crank That collab because we have a session tomorrow. So it's good. I feel like I'm more on top of my shit than ever, but I'm still really busy. So, but yeah, I feel good about where I'm at.
Well, that's good. Yeah, that was my next question is like, because obviously that's a heavy lift and I'm sure you're tired at the end of the day. I really appreciate that you broke it down into like what call and what you discuss on what call, because I feel like that's something no one ever really talks about is like the actual granular, like how many conversations you need to have to make a simple thing that someone's going to look at on a screen at your show, that kind of thing. Yeah. But my question is, other than being tiring, is it fulfilling to get into that level of granularity for everything you do? Because, you were talking earlier, like maybe years ago, you sort of passed stuff off because you didn't want to deal with it, which I think is very relatable. I think for anyone who does anything creative, you get to a certain point of professionalism where you have to start thinking about the business side. You have to start thinking about the presentation in a bigger perspective than you did before. Mm-hmm. And I think for everybody, you get to a point where you're like, well, I don't want to deal with that shit. That's not what is cool about this. But I do think there's also a fulfilling side to it if you kind of manage to break through. Like, is it actually in some ways enjoyable to like manage the shit?
Yeah, you're totally right. I think, I got into this and I think most artists get into it because they love making music and they want to DJ and, spend time in the studio. And once you get to a certain point, you just have to spend a bunch more time doing the business types of things. And I think the people who don't have the business sense and kind of push everything off, it's really easy to fall behind or just, no one's ever going to care about your business and your artist projects as much as you. So I think the fulfilling thing in doing all of that work is the vision that I have gets executed much more efficiently and correctly versus sending it off to someone and hoping that it comes back right. Because and this could also depend on how particular you are as an artist and things like that. But most artists are pretty specific about the vision that they have and what they want things to look like. And so I think, I kind of just have to spend the hours doing it, making sure everything's dialed on the front end so that when it does come back and when I do see the show and the final product, it's exactly what I wanted it to look like. It sounds great. It looks great. Everything feels good. And, like I said, the vision that I had comes to life versus I think, in times in the past when I haven't been as on top of it, I get to the end of it and it looks great, but it's not really exactly what I wanted it to be. And there's a little thing, so I think I love the fulfillment of that and just it being exactly how I want it to be.
And I think some of that is like the wisdom of having gone through the cycle a few times at this point too, where you sort of realize that it's like, if you want to feel great about it at the end, you kind of have to invest the time way earlier than you would otherwise. I think
that, and like, I am very much a people pleaser. I'm very much go with the flow. Like if there's an issue, I'm always like path of least resistance, just make sure everyone's happy and comfortable. And I think that's great to a degree, but then sometimes, I just will sacrifice something to make life easy for everybody or myself or whatever, when I really maybe shouldn't have, or, I'm like I said, just like to make sure everyone's happy sometimes. But been a little bit better, I think, at just not sacrificing and making sure that I'm involved with all the decisions and all the little things.
Yeah, I mean, that's super important, man. And I think, that's another part of like maturing as an artist and a person, like getting a little older in the game, is just realizing, who you are as a person and how you sort of act in the business world and your tendencies. Was that anything you ever like consciously worked on or came to realizations about? Or is that just kind of like, you get a little older, a little wiser, recognize patterns, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think it's a little both. I went to, a business school for college and did 4-year university and got a bachelor's degree and all that stuff. So I always have thought of myself as having a pretty decent business sense. But I think just over the years, something will pop up. And, like in Dreamverse tour back 3-4 years ago, it was like budgeting approvals for stage production. And like, it just wasn't really getting approved by the right people. And some stuff went through, and that team who was approving that wasn't really getting the full picture of all the business expenses. It's like they have their tour budget and they can see how much you're making there, but they weren't, on top of, we pay this person a salary, we pay this person a retainer for creative design and all this other stuff. And there's expenses all around the business. So I think just making, something would pop up and I would realize there's a sort of a lack of communication maybe between the different departments, and just making sure everyone's on the same page. And like you said, I think it's just after years of doing it a few, times in a row, I start to realize where maybe the communication slips are and things like that. And just sort of learn from the lesson and implement it better the next year.
Yeah. Were there any other things you learned from the whole Dreamverse album and tour experience? Because at that point, I mean, that was sort of the biggest conceptual thing I had seen you do. And, from sort of like top to bottom, it seemed like, you were trying to tie everything together, aesthetically tell this story, visually, sonically. It's like an ambitious way to put out a body of work. And I'm imagining we'll start talking about, but the next album, I'm sure there's some lessons you've taken from that. Was there anything that like surprised you about going through the whole cycle with the Dreamverse album? Any big lessons you learned about like, I have a bigger concept to put across here. How can I actually do that?
Yeah, I think we spent so much time, and I spent so much time just thinking about, like you said, the concept of the Dreamverse and how the music would play into it, and sort of, I think after doing all of that, the step of communicating it with people was like the hard part. And how do I explain all this time and thought and energy that I've put into this music and these visuals and all this kind of stuff in a really simple way for socials, but then also at a show, like you're going to the show to have a great time, probably having a few drinks or running around with your friends, and I wanted it to be surface level enough to where you could just go to the show not knowing anything and enjoy it and think it's cool and maybe piece together a few things. But if you're a huge diehard fan, you can also, about everything, and you'll recognize the characters and the videos and all these kind of different things. And I think, I think I just will be able to do it more effectively this time. And I think the concepts that we're thinking about for this new album and are just a little bit more focused on like myself, essentially, and my experience just as a human existing in this kind of like overstimulated world that all of us are dealing with. And I've always tried to be very relatable with my socials and kind of a little bit more personable, even though it's not what I love to do. But I feel like that's just another thing that everyone is relating to right now. And so I just felt like this new music, like, and this new branding style would be a little bit more focused on me rather than trying to create a whole concept and relay a whole concept throughout a show. And, that's sort of how we like ended up coming up with this Mindfull title for the next album. Cause it's just very, it's spelled with 2 L's, one word. And it's sort of this juxtaposition of, always trying to be mindful in like the real way that it means of everything that's going on, and trying to eat better and be conscious. And like, you know, there's a million things coming at you saying, don't do this, you should eat this, don't do this. I'm sure you've seen the video too, where it's like some guy goes to pour cereal and there's a video that's like, cereal is the worst thing you can eat for breakfast. And he like goes to have fruit and it's like, if you eat too much fruit, your sugar is going to fucking spike. And then it's like, he just throws that away. And then he goes to tell on his phone. It's like, the stuff from your phone is killing you. And it's just like everything he does, he just feels like, I don't know.
Oh, 100%. And even another part of that I think about all the time too, is like, we look back at things people were doing 100 years ago for like health, and they're all just like poison. And so it's like, I'm sure we're doing that right now in a million different ways that we won't know until we're long dead. And so it's, you know, it is one of those things where like, yeah, you got to worry about that. And in fact, it's very important to think about it. But at the same time, we can't take ourselves that seriously either. Like you got to have, you know, some grace for yourself.
Yeah, totally. And so, yeah, I think that whole, you know, relatable issue that everyone's going through right now of just being overstimulated by everything and constantly bombarded on socials about every possible topic you can imagine was kind of the Mindfull, like 2Ls thing, you know, and we're kind of forced almost, especially as artists, into this. You have to have content, you have to be on socials, and you have to do all this stuff. But secretly, you know, we're kind of all longing for this like mindfulness state where you're like out in nature and just being away from technology and not worrying about it. At least me personally.
Oh, and I would say I don't even think we're secretly pining for it. I think I think most of the people are pretty open about how much it sucks at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. And to an even more extreme, you know, we feel nostalgic towards the time when we didn't have phones, and there's a whole generation of people now who have never existed in that time. And I kind of like the idea of focusing on a little bit of the nostalgia of sort of this, you know, time when you just didn't have to worry about it or think about it. And I think that in a way it's something relatable to younger generations now too, because like I said, they've just never experienced a time without social media and people taking photos of everything and videos, and you can't do anything in public because whatever. It's just like, you know, there's a million things going on. So the branding style is, you know, very focused on like a lot of minds and brain mazes and just all this sort of like nostalgic video type stuff. And there's a lot of live video for the shows. And yeah, I'm excited to start rolling it all out for sure.
You going to try to do any of those phoneless shows?
What is it?
Like a phoneless show, you know, where you like lock up everybody's phones or you put tape over the cameras or something? I
would love that. You know, I think the concept for the fall, like kind of that we're doing, is trying to essentially have a takeover of like a city per weekend. So it's like one city will be New York. We'll have our big Mindfull show, potentially 2 nights of the Mindfull show, and then sort of either a pop-up or a merch pop-up or a little small show if that's fun, you know, renegade show or something like that, and kind of do a little weekend for each city, and, you know, make our production go a little further because we'll be able to use it for multiple events, and just try and, you know, have something unique in each city that's not just the show, but something like more activation-y or pop-up-y. And I think a no phone show is like exactly like kind of what one of those would be, you know?
Yeah, that would be super fun, man. There's been, I mean, you're starting to see it more and more. There's like, you know, guys like Lane 8 or something who have been doing that forever. But I think you're starting to see, I feel like the no phone show is going to be like what the 360 stage was in the last year or two.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, I love it whenever I get a chance to be off my phone. You know, I was at a wedding this weekend, and in like a tropical area, and I was just like left my phone in my room for an entire day, and it was just extremely refreshing.
I think I do a pretty good job of being off the phone for like large portions of the day, as much as I can, and still, you know, get work done. But even that, if I actually look at like the amount of time I'm on the phone, it's still staggering. And like, I feel like I'm doing a pretty good job, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
It's really nuts. I don't know. It's later on, probably by the time we're like old and maybe dead, like there will be real studies made about the effects that this had on society for like these decades, where technology exploded, but we haven't quite like swung the pendulum back to find any kind of balance with it. But exactly. It's definitely doing something, man. People are losing their minds. It's really wild 100%. Out there.
Yeah, it really is just insane. I mean, even on the music front, like my buddy just sent me a video yesterday of his cousin who's like 5 years old, and he's in Ableton. He's made a whole beat and he's like singing on it, and I'm like, I don't even like what. I don't even have memories of being 5 years old, much less making like a banger.
Yeah, can you imagine being a 5-year-old and understanding what content is?
Yeah, exactly. I saw another thing too of like, you know, the top 20 jobs that kids in elementary school want to be, and like it's like 15% YouTuber, like 20%
content
TikTok.
Creator, Twitch streamer.
Like, it's just wild. I didn't even get my first laptop until I was 17. I feel so old now. I'm like, that felt early at the time, you know?
Yeah, no, of course, man. I mean, it's well, okay, I have a few thoughts, but before we get too far afield, I wanted to go back to the idea of nostalgia that you were talking about too. And I was just listening to the stream of the album that they sent over like 10 minutes before we started talking. And I love it, man. I think it might be my favorite body of work that you've put out yet. It's really, really good, the songs on there. But yeah, dude, another part of it I think that is so fun for me is it felt nostalgic in a way that I maybe hadn't heard from you before in like such a focused body of work where you're like referencing some older sounds and eras. And I don't know if it was just the mood I was in, how it was hitting me, but like I sort of felt this sense of like fun and play in it that obviously it's still like sonically pristine and forward thinking and all the things that I think you're known for over the years. But I did feel like a sense of like, I don't know if it's
nostalgia. I know what you mean.
Nostalgia and fun and play. I'm trying to talk about it in a way that doesn't make it sound bad. Like what I was about to say was like not taking it so seriously, even though I know you do take it very seriously.
I mean, that you're 100% spot on. I think that was kind of my goal. And, you know, with the nostalgia sort of for me, I mean, you know, that was what music was for me and what it is for everybody, you know, whether it's a show or just sitting in the studio is sort of that moment of like, cool, I'm off my phone. I'm just enjoying life. I'm being in the moment and being present and like you're a moment away from stress and all that kind of stuff. And so I think the studio is that for me as well. And so I think trying to go back in and just not really think too much about, I don't know, just not trying to overthink and just have fun with it. And, you know, again, the nostalgic kind of vocals was definitely something I was going for, similar kind of nostalgic sounds and arpeggiators and almost like 90s, 2000, you know, electronic music and stuff that really first got me into it, but then just reviving it and giving it a new life and sort of bringing it into the, you know, this era.
Yeah, man. I mean, there's, I know the album's not coming out for a while, so, you know, maybe we don't talk too specifically for tracks people won't hear for a while, but like, you've got some really cool collabs with a bunch of people I love on there. There's like, I don't know, there's a song that reminded me of like old video game soundtracks. There's like an older like bro steppy song that all of them are just like, like it just seemed like fun was prioritized. That's, I think, the best way to put it, as opposed to like, you know, let's make something mind blowing and then fun kind of comes after that, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that was the goal totally. And for the show, just like, again, making it fun, high energy. You know, I think sort of the concept of the show that I ended up on was almost sort of like it's a mindful meditation like show, you know, in the beginning you have your affirmations and you know, everybody's there together and you're like, I'm gonna have a great fucking night. And then, you know, throughout the show, there's these little check-ins and things like that. And, you know, little reminders of make sure you're just like fucking enjoying the moment and not stressing about this and make sure your friends are having a good time and all that kind of stuff. So I think, it fit sort of all the different vibes of that I wanted to go for. You know, it's like still great music, still really impactful, still some type of storyline that people are going with and understanding the flow of the show, but it's not like so confusing that you're like, what character is that? Or what, there's like, it could pretty surface level in a way, but then, just has a little more meaning if you want to dig in a bit more.
No, I like that, man. Yeah. There's something to the like combination of high concept and low concept, highbrow, lowbrow, like, people come and experience like this super produced, incredible, mind-blowing show. But I like also taking little moments. This is something I talked with Jake Kill the Noise about a long time ago, where it's like, I think especially now, to your point about everybody being so bombarded and no one's ever really present anymore in any part of life, to have those moments in a show where it's like you kind of stop the big thing for a second to ground it and be like, hey, we're here together right now. This is pretty cool. This is all kind of bullshit in a way, but everything else is also kind of bullshit. So like, let's just have fun in this moment. Yeah. Those little, I'm maybe not expressing it perfectly, but those little moments of just grounding it in the immediate moment of like, yes, this is part of a bigger thing, and I have all this stuff I want to show you and tell you, and you're here, and you maybe have a relationship with me as an artist over years, but also just like we're two weird people in front of each other standing here, and it's like it can kind of be both at the same time. And I think those are my favorite moments, when you can kind of mix the bigger stuff with the very immediate small stuff.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, for you, mindfulness in general, like obviously it's the thing I think a lot of people are thinking about more these days, as it's harder to be mindful. For you, over the course of your career, as you've had to, just handle more stuff and stay on top of it, like we were talking about earlier, have you figured out any tips, tricks, anything that works for you to like keep yourself pretty grounded? Because you always present as like the most chill guy ever, but I have to assume internally that's not always the case.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I am almost like too chill sometimes. Like, there's like, I am just so far in the lane of like when something happens and it's negative or, an issue or a problem or something arises, like, if I'm not going to be stressing about it in 2 weeks or much less than that, or, a year or 5 years, like I won't let myself get upset about it or, worked up about it, because it's just not worth the energy. And I feel like I've learned that at this point. And the best thing is to just figure out what the solution is and start working on it. And the sooner that I put action to what I'm stressed about, the sooner that I feel better about it. Even if it's just one email or text or something to kind of like start the process. And I think even, like I said, even just making these to-do lists, like I think that for so long I had a management team and people kind of helping me manage all these million different things. But now I just sit down the night before the next day and I just go, here's the 12 things I need to do tomorrow. Like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. Here's my time set aside for me to go walk with no phone, where I can just enjoy the silence. Here's my time where I cook dinner and eat with my girlfriend and just enjoy that time. And here's my time that I go work out. And like, those are my times to like not think about work and do this. And then, scheduling things out a bit more and having a bit more of a routine has been like really helpful for me for that process.
Yeah. Routines and structure, I think, is huge to stave off stress. Man, I'm getting into like levels of it I would have mocked, 5-10 years ago, where like, if I know I'm going to like play a show the next day, I'll like lay out what I'm going to wear the day before. So I like don't even have to think, there's just like little details like that just solve minor points of stress throughout your day. Yeah. And it is another one of those things where that it is very corny to do, but at the same time, it is also very helpful.
Yeah. And it just saves a little bit of time here and there. And I think time management has always been kind of one of the toughest things for me, and just making sure I'm spending my time the right way. And I've always had such an issue. I mean, I've never been like gone to the doctor about ADD or anything, but I think everyone has the issue of I'm sitting there working on something, writing an email, and I get a text and I look over and I see it, and then I open it up and I see another email, and then I start responding to that email, and then, someone calls me, and by that time I've done 4 things half and I haven't finished any of them.
Yeah.
And I just fall into this cycle of doing that. So even just, I never used Do Not Disturb on my phone until like 6 months ago or a year ago.
Oh,
and it was just
that's
like,
so huge.
Even if I was on silent, I would hear the buzz and just go, oh, what is that? And so I think I've just been trying to use that more too, when I'm like, if I know I'm executing something and really trying to do it for the next 30 minutes, like everything is just off, so that I cannot possibly get distracted, because it's just so easy to. And there's always a million things going on. So trying to make that to-do list, put it in priority order of what I need to do the most. And then just like, here's an hour when I'm going to do this. Here's an hour when I'm going to do this. And just really try and bang through it.
Well, that makes me think too, you were talking about how going to the studio and working on music can actually become kind of that like peaceful escape for you now. Mm-hmm. And that's a really interesting way to think about your relationship to creation at this point. Because it's a thing I talk with a lot of people about, of like, when you first start off, you're just excited. You have all these ideas. You want to get them out there. Everything's exciting. Like working on music is just like, it's just shoveling coal into the furnace, basically. But I think over time, that changes as your relationship to, what you've put out changes, how people perceive you, what's expected of you, all that kind of stuff. Is that for you like, well, I won't even put words in your mouth, but like going into the studio, maybe even like making this album, what is the fun part there? What is the like fulfillment part there? Is it the same as it used to be, or has it shifted?
I think, my goal was for it to be the same. I think it has shifted for sure. Like weeks, months, like this current month, it's like I got 2 hours of studio time on Thursday. I got 3 hours on Wednesday. Like, what am I going to get done in that time? And I go to my list and I check. I'm okay. I can do this. And there's not as much, okay, I get to go to the studio. What do I want to work on? And just like following my inspiration. So last year I did, I didn't do a hard ticket tour. I didn't do anything, just so that I could spend that time and make those, make the space for myself to just go to the studio and just write whatever I felt like writing. Because that is really when I do feel like I'm sort of in the escape mode. And as much fun as it is being in the studio, if I'm finishing something up, it's not the same level of like relaxed and I'm having a good time if there's a deadline and I need to finish all this stuff, versus just going in and, like I said, kind of following my creative inspiration, seeing what feels cool. And, I did a whole writing camp for this album, which was my first writing camp that I've hosted. And it was so awesome. We had a few other producer buddies, that Sully and Viperactive and a couple other guys. And we were sort of the main Ableton worker for each room. We had 4 different rooms going, or 3 rooms going at once. And we would have songwriters come over in the morning, instrumentalist people. We'd put 1 or 2 songwriters and 1 instrumentalist in each studio. And then we'd all work, on something for 3-4 hours, get together, have some lunch, switch up rooms. Everybody would rotate, get in, and then at the end of the day, we'd all play our ideas and just see what sounded cool. And, there's stuff that I was writing on that ended up not being for Mindfull. It was, we went to another project, or there's things that they started that turned into the, projects for me. And so that was a really fun kind of like very music focused, just like enjoying creativity type thing that I did last year. That was really, really awesome. But yeah, I think that's definitely the goal for me whenever I get to write music and start the ideation process. It's just like not having an agenda and not worrying about what people are going to want to hear and not worrying about what I think is going to work, and more just about what do I want to play on stage? What do I want to, what feels fun, what feels cool, what feels, new and fresh for me. And just focusing on that, which is, even from day one, something I've always tried to focus on, because it's just so easy to, get opinions from someone or feedback from someone. And it's just, I don't know, they're just someone else. They have a different opinion, different thoughts. It's just not what, you know what I mean? It's just easy to get caught up in trying to please other people and do what they think is cool.
Well,
what you think is cool.
Absolutely. And I think you've always been a pretty collaborative guy in the studio. But one thing I did notice going through the new album is, you know, you're working with some legends and some people you've worked with before, but also there's definitely like an embrace of the new generation of like the just, you know, hot shit kids who are coming up. And like, it's pretty much all of my favorite people. And I have to imagine too, that's part of the sense of fun I was talking about too, where I was almost in your shoes and just being like, these are the people who make me really stoked about music right now. Can I go hang out with them for a while? And
100%. Yeah, I think that's been, I mean, even last year too, you know, after Dreamverse, I kind of wanted to do the same thing. And, you know, at the time, I think I did like that Unsound EP was like the first one I did. And I did the song with Ray Volpe and a couple other things. And I think, I just remember kind of being like, I really want to just put some time and energy into working with people who I think are about to crush it and starting to blow up. And you know, I love the collaborative process anyway. Like you said, I'm very collaborative. Almost every song, whether it's a solo Nightmare song, and I'm working with a songwriter, a singer, or, you know, production and working with another producer. I just love collaborating, and I would always learn something new, and gives me a chance to step outside my comfort zone a little bit, or maybe make a genre that I wouldn't necessarily make if it's their style. And so definitely been focusing on that and just reaching out to the, you know, the artists who I think are killing it right now, and their music's inspiring me, and, you know, working on some music with them.
Yeah, man. I mean, you mentioned Viper Active, and, you know, the track you have with him on there now. I don't know if that's the final version, but that is so much fun to me, man. And he's such an exciting dude. Like, you know, I talked to him a few months ago on here. Yeah.
I feel like we can talk about that one because I, you know, have the EDC set coming up, and my goal, I mean, I'm basically playing every single one of these in the EDC set because it will be the first Mindfull show. And, so that one, or at least one, there's actually 3 that we worked on together for the album. But the main one that we're doing together is the Cyanide one. Maybe is that what you're thinking of?
I don't have the track list in front of me, but it's the kind of like up tempo one.
Maybe Electricity. We worked on 2 different ones, and then a third one actually is going to be on his project.
Okay,
now.
Nice.
But
That's awesome.
I mean, there's a few that are just. He's an absolute beast in the studio. I mean, just sitting and watching him work on stuff was special. You know, just so much to learn, and it's amazing that there's just still people on that level who can. I don't know.
Did you guys talk about his like come up when he was doing all those songs on Fiverr? I mean,
briefly, that? I mean, I heard. You know, I definitely was. I didn't really talk about it too much with him, but when we first met at the writing camp, I feel like we bonded pretty quickly, and, you know, he's a really, really nice dude as well. And, talked a little bit about that stuff, but I feel like I ended up honestly seeing that on like a podcast clip or something where I was
I talked to him about it on this one, but it's just a mind blowing thing I still think about sometimes. Cause he was basically just like ghost producing songs for people for like $50, $75. And he did it for so long. He was like, I think he said to me, he was like, over like the period of like a year, I think I made like 1,500 songs.
Yeah.
something insane. And that connected for me. I was like, oh, okay, that's why he's this good. Like,
and I mean, that's everybody who is starting producing or, you know, asking for advice, which is, you know, obviously a question I get kind of a lot at meet and greets or things like that. Yeah, that's always my answer is the more work and a practice that you can just, you know, make a new song every day, the quicker that you're going to learn, because almost always the coolest things I've made end up basically being an accident. And I'm just working on something, trying to make something, and then some weird, crazy sound comes out of it accidentally, and I can chop that up and turn it into a lead, and then it ends up being the coolest thing. And so I think, just working through like a ton of work is really what gets you from that level of, I have really cool ideas and I'm trying to make them, but they're not quite there yet, to like, my shit sounds really good and I'm stoked with where it's at. And I think, just that practice, you know, some people it takes 6 months and some people it takes 3 years or 5 years or whatever. But the more you can just practice and and make something new every day, and just learn little by little. The quicker you'll get to that point.
Yeah, totally. And to add on to that too, I think not being so stuck in a single vision of yourself or who you are as an artist, or like being open to the idea that maybe there could be more to what you do, or maybe you aren't fully fleshed out yet. Even if you have a strong like vision for what you want to do, like this is maybe a tenuous connection, but like I even think about you working with ASAP Ferg again on this album, and you guys have collaborated in the past. And he's one of those guys where I think he's so cool, not only because he's very talented, but like he seems very comfortable dropping into a lot of different projects, and he seems comfortable in a lot of different arenas. And it doesn't seem like he's too tied to like a single idea of who he is as an artist.
Yeah.
And I to me, that at this point in my life is like one of the coolest things, where it's just, you're always learning, you're confident that you have something to offer, but it doesn't have to be restricted to like a single identity. I really like that. I don't know. I know you and I have talked about working with Ferg in the past, but like, is it any different this time around?
I mean, it was just as awesome. Like, you know, I think if anything, it was even better this time around. I mean, it was still great last time, but I think this time around, there was even more communication between us just about feedback on a song. Like, you know, I think this section should be over here. Maybe let's try changing up the drums for here or whatever. And, you know, he was just giving me a lot of thoughts and feedback. And he's one of those people who is clearly there to make something dope. He's not about the money or worried about picking up a bag or doing anything like that. And super respectful, you know, of everyone's time. And we did our music video, you know, he was there 10 minutes early, ready to go. It was all, you know, it's not like he's showing up late or causing problems or leaving early or things like that. And even with the video, you know, he's providing ideas. Maybe let's try a shot like this, or put the camera on me and I'll try one, you know, which is just cool. You know, and not a lot of times when I do big collaborations with sort of these mega superstar level artists, that they're that involved in. So, it was, I can't say enough good things about Ferg. He's just such a legend.
No, that's awesome, man. What about Flowdan? As long as we're talking about legendary people you got on the record.
Such a legend. Honestly, the Flowdan like collab originally came through, you know, our Good Vibrations label we're partnered with Insomniac Records, and they sort of had like, I don't know if they had originally gotten the vocal from him or somehow it came through that. And they were like, hey, well, you know, we've got this top line. If you're interested in working on it, like try some ideas. And so I was like, absolutely, this is amazing. And I realized it was drum and bass. And I mean, it was a great process as well. It took me forever to get it to where I like, just because I felt like there's just this thing about Americans making drum and bass where it just always sounds American. And I was desperately trying to not sound like that as much as I could. I went to all my UK friends and my, you know, Blank, who does his ammo project, and all those kind of people. Was like, what can I do to make it sound less?
Wait, so can we nerd out about that? What do you do to make it sound less American?
One thing was just the buildups. I feel like Americans tend to just make these outrageously large, huge snare type like buildups. Right. A lot of drum and bass stuff. I mean, you know, there's obviously different styles, very jump uppy. I kind of lean towards the more sort of like sub-focusy dimension, like melodic. It's a little bit more melodic and a little bit, you know, usually a vocal, and I don't know, just a little bit more of kind of a consistent drive throughout the whole song versus like big up and downs, which a lot of my music for dubstep and trap type stuff is that way. But the sidechain compression, I think a lot of people will just put a LFO tool or put something on there that's just doing the same thing for a kick, snare, all the same.
Yeah.
And I think it ended up sounding much better to have a pretty strong kick sidechain that's still tight, and then a snare that's even tighter. And, you know, I think using the sidechain compression as more of a mixing tool than like a sound design tool, if that makes sense. Rather than trying to duck out sounds, it's more of just, how can I make this sound hit better, and just duck out the snare for a quick second and the kick for a quick second. And so that was something I really had to draw back, was like my sidechain. I was way too heavily sidechained on everything, and I only had one. And so once I got that a little bit more dialed, and then, just sample selection, I think, is a lot of it too. Just get, not using a big dubstep snare, and trying to make sure you have all the right hats, and, not just using a loop, but going through until you feel like you really can just listen to those drums with nothing else in there. And it's like, it has a great flow. And,
those are all great points, man. That it's such an American bass producer thing to use the sidechain as like a sound design tool, like you were saying. Yeah. I've never heard it put that way before, but that's exactly right. And there's like a subtlety. The same thing with the buildups too. Now that I'm thinking about it, there's like a subtlety to UK drum and bass, even the heavy stuff, even like the tear out stuff, where instead of the crazy American buildups, it'll just be like 4 bars of like a kick, like a kick drum roll that like just slowly increases in volume, and that's the whole buildup. That's literally the whole thing. There might be one little riser or something like that, but a lot of it's just like almost filtering stuff out, and then when the drums come back in with the big bass, it's just, feels great. And I think, I don't know, for me at least, as Americans, I think it maybe has to do a little bit with the crowd, because if I make a huge buildup for literally any drop, like it's going to go off more than if I don't have a huge buildup in the States. Like, it's like, I remember when I was first on tour with Flux Pavilion, I was opening, he was like, you can have a crazy buildup. It doesn't matter what the drop is, but like people are going to be so hyped because the buildup's crazy. And so I think that's just something I also fell into, just always trying to make this crazy amount of energy before like everything drops in. But I don't know, just kind of different style. Yeah. Well, I think it's worth thinking about too, like the motivations behind the way we make music, right? Because thinking about it in terms of a live show is super important. I think anyone making dance music has to be aware of that aspect. Yeah. But then at the same time, it's like, I still think a crazy buildup has to be justified, Yeah. Totally. There are some songs that just don't need it, or like are made worse by having it, 100%. Having that awareness, it's tough to do when you're in the studio, because of course you just want to maximize the impact every time. Yeah, absolutely. But, I mean, a good drum and bass set is just like so amazing to watch. And I think even like when I watch these Dimension sets, and, I feel like he's probably one of the guys I've worked with the most sort of in that camp. And there are times where I feel like it's building for a minute and a half, but it's still not a huge, crazy buildup. Like it still feels like the energy slowly rising and the kicks are going. And then I don't even know, there's just elements that are slowly rising every 4 bars, and it just feels like it's constantly rising. But there's just some level of, I don't know, I don't want to say discretion, but it's just sort of this like minimal energy build. And then there's more nuance, I think, or at least there can be more nuance. Like drum and bass is one of those genres that's unique in bass music for a lot of reasons. One of which I think is that you can do long mixes with it. And a lot of bass music, especially modern bass music, that's so heavily structured to like just get to the impact, get to the drop. It doesn't really lend itself to long mixes, but there's something so nice about just letting it ride in drum and bass, bringing stuff in and out. And 100%. I've noticed that too. I mean, we've done a couple of back-to-backs as well. They're like, he'll do a 64 bar mix, and it's just one vocal that's been going forever and this super long build up, and then he takes it out and then brings it back in for the second part of the drop and then plays it out. And, it could be definitely longer mixes, and I don't know. I love it. I love all of it. I've definitely been like contemplating if I want to start a drum and bass project for so long, but I don't know. Just felt like the to-do list was already long enough, sort of, but I think I'll do it at some point. That'd be fun, man. I mean, I think the drum and bass tunes you have on the new album, I think fit in really well with the rest of the stuff there. I mean, overall, genre wise, you've always dabbled in a few different areas, but I feel like this would be like the broadest album yet as far as like all the places you're hitting sonically. Would you agree?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I've definitely always tried to do a little bit of everything, even from like Nightmare EP Part 1. First thing I really put out, it was like a future bassy song and a dubstep song, a house song, and a singing song where I was like, very chill. So yeah, Dreamverse, I tried to do the same thing as well and have a little bit of everything, but I think this one definitely encompasses just all different types of dance music and a little bit of everything, some drum and bass, some house, some UK kind of bassy stuff, and heavy dubstep and a little bit of old school trap vibes. And there really is kind of everything.
Yeah, man, I really love it, man. I think you knocked it out of the park. But are you, for the live show, are you thinking anything different? We talked about it a little bit, but like anything you're trying to do differently here that maybe you haven't done in the past, or anything you're adding that you're stoked about?
I think we're kind of just trying to, move with the technology, and there's a couple cool moments that I'm really trying to do with like lasers and video combined together to create some really cool moments. And I think I've been trying to get better and better at just planning ahead and sort of trying to build out the time code and like, okay, we've got my, teardrop or whatever, the virtual riot collab from Dreamverse, and sitting down with my VJ guy and picking out the exact clips that I want and going with a lighting guy, and I want lights for these exact moments, and just really trying to design the full show by myself. So, I'm sure, a lot of people I'm sure don't understand how time code works, but essentially it's just, my VJ has a computer with cables that run all the way up to the deck, and any song that I select from my playlist, if we've pre-planned, like as soon as I play it, it will automatically launch the visual on his computer so that it can play in time with everything. So I'm really just trying to get the music to them and sit with them and help program, figure out all the lights, figure out everything. So like I was saying, kind of doing the nuts and bolts. So then when the show is done and complete, it's like the exact vision that I was imagining. And I think when you do that and you do like create a laser moment, and, for the laser moment, everything's programmed so that the lights are off, the video is off, the fucking every light in the whole thing is off. When the laser is shooting off and everything's dark, it's like this crazy impactful moment. But if it's shooting off while there's a video playing in the back and there's other stuff going on, it's way, way less impactful. So I think we've been really trying to just, here's our video moment. We have, the live feed video, which we've been using, which has been really cool. We can show me on stage DJing and the multicam setup, or we can show the fans and the crowd and put them on stage. And been using a lot of that light or that live video sort of element. And I think, it's sort of a combination of making sure the everything is really programmed well, like bringing in a lot of laser content and light and video content, and then just like essentially, I don't know, making sure it's all dialed in that sense, so that way when I do come in, I can still switch it up a little bit whenever I need to, and the VJ's ready, the LD's ready, and then if I do want to play something completely different that nobody's heard, we also have a bank of visuals and all these different types of things that they're ready to just launch and do on the fly in those types of cases. But hopefully for these exact, there's probably only 6 or 7 of these Mindfull tour big headline shows. Those are the ones where, we'll probably try and have it as dialed as we possibly can. And then for the fun shows, the pop-ups or whatever, it's like, I'll just go in and play a 2-hour show and just kind of freestyle it and have some fun.
Yeah, man. And again, taking care of details ahead of time ensures that you can have fun in the moment, right? And be not to be too corny about it, but be mindful and like be present, right? Because if you took care of it beforehand, then you don't have to worry about it when it's happening.
Exactly.
And, yeah.
I can just worry about the mixing and making sure, just making sure that everything sounds good. And then I know that it looks good as well if I got that part right.
What are your crowds looking like these days? Because, you know, you've been Nightmare for like a decade at this point,
Yeah.
and you've had, I think, a generation of fans kind of grow up with you a little bit. Are you still seeing lots of new people? Are people still finding out about Nightmare, or is it like more of like a family vibe at this point?
It's definitely a pretty good mixture, and I think it varies show by show. You know, I've done quite a bit fewer hard ticket shows this last year. I think I was saying, just with the goal of having more time to write music, planning the show for this year, and just being ahead of everything. And I think the hard ticket shows is sort of where I see a lot more of the, you know, genuine diehard Nightmare fans. If I go play a club or something like that, I mean, it could be anything. You know, sometimes I'll do college events and it's a bunch of young kids, but I think for my shows, for sure, it's definitely, I mean, it's older than it was. You know, it's a lot of people I think are the same fans who have found me early on and have been following me ever since. They still love going to the events and shows and things like that. And I think if I look at my Spotify and analytics or Apple Music analytics or things like Instagram analytics, it kind of shows the same thing. And I think that's something that every artist who's like my age or older or even a little bit younger is like, all right, how do we get the new fans and the new kids, and like, you know, trying to attract all the new EDM, like, you know, kids who are growing up in this era but still going to festivals and stuff like that. So I think, you know, for me, a bit of that way of reaching out to those is, like we were saying, you know, collaborating with the new young artists who are doing a really great job. And a lot of them, you know, like even Knock 2, it's like when we got together and we started working, he was like, oh man, I first heard Street when I was 12 or something. And I was like, that's crazy to think about. And, you know, now he's grown up and crushing it and absolutely smashing, huge audience, huge fan base. And so I think, you know, in the position I'm in, and, you know, I like to think I have great taste and can kind of pick these people out a little bit before they sort of hit their big moment. And so I think that's kind of what I've been trying to do a bit, you know, is find the people who I feel like are really inspiring and really killing it, who are younger, getting in and just working on some music together. And, you know, I think it gives us a chance to reach their crowd. They get to reach my crowd. Everybody kind of benefits from that. And events wise too, you know, I think certain events and promoters and, you know, just have a younger crowd or an older crowd, and I'm just trying to mix it up and do a little bit of all of it so that I am, you know, making sure that the people who started with me and are sticking with me and still coming to events and stuff are loving it, but then also, you know, doing my best to sort of get myself in front of new audience and new fans. And
yeah, it's interesting to think about, man. I never really thought about it that hard, but it's like I've known you for a long time now. It's weird to think about what if I was just finding out about you right now, you know?
Yeah.
Like, do you think about that, where it's like you've done all this stuff, but like some new person might just come in and hear like the last song you put out, and that's the only thing they've ever heard. And it's kind of weird, but it's also kind of fun where, you know, I think we all at a certain point as artists, you feel somewhat tied to your past. Yeah, and it is kind of a nice thought that like, oh, actually, you don't really have to be that tied to it if you don't want to be, because someone's going to come in and not care about your past at all.
100%. Yeah, I think it's a balance of, you know, I mean, not switching up completely and like alienating the people who you know, like the style and the branding and everything that I've created, and switching it up. But yeah, also, you know, like I said, it's a balance. But do
you feel like you've made it at this point? I know it's a weird question, but it's like, it's an interesting one to me for people who have been doing this for a long time, where it's like, I think on paper, you have made it, right? Like you're successful, you have some money, you travel, you play big shows, you get to execute ideas in a big way. Does it feel like success, or like what you thought success was going to be when you were younger?
You know, I think in a way, yes. Like I think I had a lot of goals, you know, and a lot of them we've done them. You know, it's like headlining Red Rocks was one. I got to do my own headline Red Rocks, and, you know, playing main stage at EDC. I got to do that, like Tomorrowland, the Ultra in South America, and like a lot of these things that for sure were on my goal list. But I think it's just one of those things where I just really try not to ever compare myself to anybody, because, probably 4 or 5 years ago, I think it was at Ultra or something, and I was talking to DJ Snake, and, I was about to play before him, and he was like, man, like, I wish I had your set time, because then I could play bangers the whole time and I would have to play my Justin Bieber collab, stuff like that. And I was like, man, like, it's just so funny in my mind, I'm like, man, I got to get to that DJ Snake level. I need a hit song so I can get a platinum record. Like, I've never had a gold or platinum or anything like that. And, that's something that could put me up to the next level. And then, like, he's there being like, I just want to play bass music like you guys. And, it's just a perfect example of, like, comparison is the thief of joy. I think, like, it's so easy to look at somebody else and go, why am I not there? Or, like, I've been doing this. And I don't know. It's just easy to get lost in trying to do something else. And just, I've always been really trying to focus on just the moment and where I'm at. And there's 1,000 people that I talk to every week and month who are, wish they could get to do the shows that I do and the sets that I get to do. And so I just try to be super grateful and happy. I think the moment I could pay my rent from music was the moment I was like, I've made it. Like, it was like 10 years ago for me that I felt like I made it, because I get to do what I love for a living. And so all the other goals and, steps forward, I think, are huge and fulfilling. But it's really, it's the journey, I guess, without sounding too cheesy, rather than the destination.
No, that dude, you summed it up. That's kind of what I think of as success these days, for sure, is just the ability to keep doing the thing you like to do. Like, exactly. That's really all it is. All the other stuff is sometimes that'll be up, sometimes that'll be down. But if you're just able to do the thing you like to do and, not have to worry about it too much, I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I agree. And, I think staying, like, relevant is really hard. There's just so many things moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And I think I worked really, really hard my first 5-6 years through COVID just to do, not say yes to everything, but just doing as much as I possibly could to get my name out there and promote everything and put out music and just play every festival I could and just get in front of many people as possible, so that I felt like I could establish myself as, like, this headliner. And then, from that point on, start saying no to a little bit more and, like, taking a little bit more time with everything. And I think just, trying to get to that point. I feel like I did sort of get to that point where I wanted to get to, of, like, I feel like I can headline, like, a small show. I could go to any city in the US, play like 1,000-person room, essentially. And it would be a pretty good show, or sold out roughly, or whatever. And I think that was kind of, like, one of my main goals, at least for now, where I feel like I can sit back a bit and, like, get into the nuts and bolts of this and really optimize my business. And, I think I went through this crazy growth time where everything blew up for me from 0 to 100. And then I've kind of just been trying, we went through COVID, and I feel like my team kind of went away and everybody changed that I was working with, essentially. And so now I've just been trying to, like, sort of not rebuild the business, but essentially just approach music and shows and everything with much more thought and detail, and make sure I'm doing it exactly the right way. And just, retaining the fans that I have, like I said, getting as many new ones as possible, and just continually being on that, being prepared, so that when the next big opportunity does come, and let's say, Travis Scott or some crazy artist is now into dubstep, and I have a chance to get in the studio with them, and I'm prepared, I'm ready, I've already been releasing music, I'm still staying relevant and doing all this stuff. And, like I said, I've said it a bunch of times, but it's a known thing. But success is when, preparation meets opportunity. So it's like, as long as you're doing your thing, hustling, putting out content that you like and you love, the right time, when an opportunity comes, you're there and you're ready to go. And that's when you, like, make your leaps and bounds of success to kind of get to that next level.
Yeah, no, 100%, man. I think that's a kind of the perfect answer. And I'll wrap it up here in a second. I think this is last big question I had for you is, let's take it all the way back. Like, even to when you were a kid here, because we're talking about the here and now, but I'm also curious, we've talked about sort of your come up and your path to what you're doing now, but I was thinking about this earlier today when I knew we were coming to talk. And we talked about this a little. You're the chill guy. You're like the always chill dude, at least in my experience. You've been nothing but. And I always wonder, because I'm somewhat that way too, little introverted, quiet dude, not necessarily the life of the party guy.
Yeah.
Where does the drive to get on stage come from? The drive to perform? Because I think, you don't always assume that it's the quiet kid who wants to be that guy.
Yeah. I think it was definitely a bit learned for me, because I think I was making the music, and I got into producing, writing, engineering, all that kind of stuff. And when I moved to LA, my goal was, I'm going to be the sickest producer. I'm going to win Grammys. Like, I want to do that. And I wanted to have my artist project, of course. And that was the plan, but I didn't really calculate like the amount of shows and performing and all that, how important it was to like actually having income and like, doing all that kind of stuff. So once I got to the point where I needed to do shows, that was where, me and Slander were kind of best buds at the time, and they had been DJing for a while. I had been producing for a while, and we kind of I was like, you teach me how to DJ, I'll teach you everything I know about production. And so I think we teamed up a bit there, and Derek for sure was one of the main people who really helped me, plan my sets out, get the set ready to go. And then I think just the passion for what I was doing and making music and playing it for people is sort of the thing that helped me get up there. And, my first few shows, my stage presence was definitely horrifically bad. And like, I was just standing there looking down the entire time with no energy, making sure I wasn't messing up any mixes. And I think it took me a while, probably 100 shows, before I would get up there and be willing to jump on the mic and say something. And I think I was, a kid in middle school who was like deathly afraid of making a presentation in front of my class. And so it did take a little while but to kind of want to be on stage. But I think, after doing it enough and, really just having the confidence in what I'm going to play and knowing my music really well makes being on stage way more comfortable. Like if you have any level of stress of like, what am I going to play next, and trying to figure it all out and just, not prepared, then it can be really stressful. But I think once I got up there, and I think also once I had a couple moments where shit really fucked up, and then I kind of got to see, what the result was from it. It's like the first time I paused the music on a festival stage accidentally, and like there's 20,000 people just going, oh, and then you're like, oh my God, do I just start it again? Or should I say something on the mic? And like, you just kind of freak out, and it's like this horrible, horrible moment. But then afterwards you're like, you just go, what's up guys? How's everyone doing? And everyone's like, yeah. And you start the song and everyone forgets about it. And so I think once I had a few of those moments where kind of like a worst case scenario while you're DJing in front of a big crowd happens, and then I realized it's really not even that big of a deal at the end of the day. Like I said, am I going to be thinking about this in 6 months or a year or whatever? I think just learning to move on from like those kind of situations. It's like, we're all just here having fun and DJing. We're not,
it's not that big a deal
or anything that's going to like, if shit goes wrong, we're in big trouble. So I think, once I got to the point where I felt comfortable talking on the mic, solving a problem if something goes wrong, or like I said, if all the music shuts off and everything, I can get on and just go, what's up guys? How's everyone doing today? Like, I love you guys. We're figuring this shit out. Like, we'll be back in 2 minutes or whatever. It definitely helped. But yeah, those first 20, 30, 40 shows were pretty nerve wracking. And those, my first show, so it was probably 100 people in the crowd for all of them.
Well, I was going to say, did you start doing shows like you were already Nightmare when you started playing out? Is that right? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, I sort of like, I had played, a couple college shows here and there or whatever as, T-Mare, which was just my childhood nickname. And so, I as soon as I was finishing Icon Collective, which was like the year-long music school, I was like, all right, I need to start a new project. My music's sounding so much better. I want to like brand it really well. And, you know, I want my first release to be like something really big. And so I got this remix opportunity for Skrillex, and I was like, this will be my first Nightmare release. And so sort of planned it around like launching the project and not doing any shows until I could do at least a basic headline show, even if it was 100 people in like a, you know, or whatever. Yeah. I have my own headline show. And so I did kind of wait for that. And, you know, I had a period, and through a year and a half of Nightmare stuff, I was putting out songs and people were playing them, but it was still like, can't really do any shows yet. And, you know, I was out of money, and it was just like, oh God, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
But then, like I said, that preparation meets opportunity. I was giving out music to all my friends, gave Street to Snails, and he played it in his mix. Skrillex was like, I want that song, gave it to him. He played it on Ultra main stage, and then it was like instantly like labels hit me up, artists hit me up, asking for a song.
No, I still remember that moment, man. It's yeah. I think all of us who were in the scene at the time were stoked when that happened. You know, it's like, because we were all kind of coming up in vaguely the same era, the same scene. And so it's like, anytime you see someone get a look like that when you're kind of in the trenches too, it's like so exciting.
It's good for everybody. Yeah.
Oh, dude. Yeah. And it's just fun. It's like, you know, seeing that it connects the sort of like famous, whatever nebulous, how do we get there kind of thing to like this immediate, like, oh, this guy I know made this in his bedroom kind of thing. And I don't know, it's inspirational, man. I think it's good for everybody. But yeah, it's cool you have like a singular moment to point to, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, still every day I'm grateful for it. I don't even know if Skrillex knows that he did it still, but...
You've never talked to him about it?
I like kind of, I've mentioned it for sure. But like, it's funny, like the day after it happened, I ended up being somehow at the same hotel that he was at. And he was like walking out with his bags, and he was like, I haven't slept in 5 days, or, you know, he had just come back from South America, I think, and like was going back and forth between Ultra and Lollapalooza or something. And I was like, dude, like, I can't believe you played my song last night. Like, thank you so much. Like, I've already literally signed it to like whatever your teams hit me up, Outlet and stuff like that. And he was kind of like, what? Like, he clearly had no idea what I was talking about or what song it was or anything.
Oh,
and
that's
then,
awesome.
Like, probably a few years later, I connected with him and was like, you know, you totally put me on, and you playing that song in Ultra set helped me out. And he was like, oh, cool. I like still don't even know if he knew, but yeah, the nicest guy ever. Every time I've hung out with him, he's been super accommodating. And yeah,
well, I love that. I mean, that's funny, but it's also, I love that story because it's very sweet, where it kind of shows you the value of like reaching out and just generally being a good person and like giving people looks without really thinking about it. And, you know, whether it's just playing somebody's song who's maybe unknown at the time, all that kind of thing. And you may never know the effect it has, but then you're an example where sometimes it has this massive effect. And I guess it kind of doesn't matter if Skrillex knows that or not, you know, and that's kind of cool.
100%. Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I've even had some things like that where, you know, on a lesser scale, but someone's like, oh, like, I sent you a message about taking photos at your show and you gave me a media pass, and now I'm like a photographer for a living. And it's like things like that, or, you know, you added me to a guest list for your show on Twitter because I said I was out of money, and like I met my wife there or something. And it's like, there's some crazy stories like that. And I'm just like, wow, that's unbelievable.
No, it's, dude, yeah, I've had it with the podcast too. People who end up, you know, being like known names in the scene of being like, yeah, like I listened to this for a year when I was just trying to start up or whatever. And I mean, that's awesome. I never think about that though, you know, and then hearing it, I'm like, what are you talking about? But it's that kind of thing where I think you just gotta, you know, put the good shit out and not worry about the consequences or like the results of it. It's just focusing on, you know, doing what you think is fun or cool and trying to help people out.
Yep. I mean, that's really what it all comes down to at the end of the day. I feel like you know, it's just this balance of putting out what you like in a very genuine, organic fashion and being nice to people. And it's like, it's just both of those have such a heavy weight, and like, you know, people like to work with people they like. And even when I was first doing that first year of touring, you know, like every show I went to, I was like, give me 2 waters and 2 beers and I'll show up on time and I'll do my thing. And like, hopefully if your show doesn't make money, let me know. We'll figure, you know, it's like,
yeah.
I just wanted to be the easiest possible artist to book ever. So that second time they're like, that guy was great, let's bring him back, you know. And I think building those relationships has been a huge help for me.
Dude,
as well.
It's so important, especially when you're starting off. There's no question. Yeah. Well, dude, I mean, I think we're pretty done here. Are you anything else we should talk about for the album? Anything else for the tour? Anything else we should get out there?
I don't really know. I think we got, you know, most of it. Just very.
It's really good, man. I hope you
and
feel good about it. It's fucking great.
I do feel good. Yeah, I think I don't even know how many songs are in that playlist, but I probably have like 18 or 20 that I've been trying to narrow it down to.
Yeah, there were a bunch. There was one song that's in there twice.
Oh, really? Yeah. That sounds great. Yeah, there's probably just 2 different versions that are slightly different.
I think it was the Crank That collab.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're finishing that one up hopefully tomorrow, and we've been playing that one a bunch at Ultra and stuff. So I think I'm very excited for that one. I feel like that's going to be a big one for both of us.
That's another nostalgia one too, without spoiling too much.
It's Applestein, yeah, exactly. I mean, dude. I feel like we can talk about that one because I posted it, but yeah, we got.
Oh, did you? Okay, nice.
I mean, we've been playing it. You know, we posted an Ultra and all that kind of stuff, and I think. Yeah, I mean, we're going to hopefully just license it for, I think, both of our projects and try and just make it a single for, you know, just push it in as many places as possible. But yeah, I got this big playlist from this publisher that we worked with, and they were like, look, we bought all the rights to all these songs. If there's anything you want to make a cover of, you know, like re-sing it or do anything like that, let us know, and we can hopefully work out the licensing. And I was like, Kiss Applestein, I want to do this 100%, and California or whatever. And like a day later, our team was like, whoa, Craig Dad wanted to do the same thing. So, and I just texted him, I was like, we got to just do this together. It's going to be perfect.
It's so fun, dude.
It's been definitely one of the craziest moments of my shows. And I mean, Christian Crank Dad's like just one of the best people ever. And I haven't been happier to see someone succeed in a long time. Like, he's just on an absolute tear right now. And every time I see his shows, it's amazing. He's the best. And happy to be able to work with him on that.
Yeah. I was just talking to someone about him, man. He's always been so good. Oh, wait, this is the last thing. We just for 2 seconds and I'll let you go.
Yeah.
You're making a book?
A book. Yeah. We actually, I did the 10 Years of Nightmare coffee table book. We'll have to send you one. It was kind of just, I don't know, one of those things where, like we talked about earlier, it's like, there's just so many things that we've done. It's like, I almost forget. And I know, you know, for new fans who have, you know, just arriving, obviously probably don't know any of the stuff, but I almost wanted to make it for myself, really. You know, it was a little bit of a personal project, and just sitting down with my media team and like my creative director guy and just going through all these photos and all these moments and just kind of picking out my favorite 20 or 30 moments for every year and just sort of putting it into a photo book. And there's a couple of little stories of, you know, we got stuck in this airport for 14 hours and had to sleep on the ground and had to go play a show in like Israel the next day and then Romania, and like, you know, certain crazy stories or little bits and pieces that I felt like just, I loved the story, but I never got to kind of explain it to people or tell it to people. And then, you know, we just have a photo from the moment. So it's cool. I really loved it. And it's out. I mean, it's out right now. You could go get it. And
that's
awesome, 10 Years of Night. Just sort of nostalgic memory of all the cool photos. And I tried to do basically photos that were not on Instagram, you know, so everything in there should be something that's like a behind the scenes of the Ferg video from the first time, or, you know, a bunch of music video content that had never been seen, or just little bits and pieces here. And so that was a really fun process. Way more work than I was anticipating. Like, I
was about to
hundreds
ask,
of hours. Of like
everyone says how much making a book sucks. I was curious
never, ever, like, I don't know. I now feel like if I did a second book, I could do it way better. And it's still not even close to like as much stuff in there as I wanted there to be, but I think it turned out great. Yeah.
Have you done much writing for projects like that before? Like, was it an interesting process to go through of like, you're writing text that's going to be in a book, even though it's like stories from your life, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a photo book. Like, okay. It's not like a book. It's a coffee table photo book. So there's probably 10 stories that were 2 paragraphs each that I put in there. And, you know, I put like a family dedication, a couple little things like that. But overall, it wasn't definitely not like, I wasn't writing like a book. I'm definitely not by any means a writer. So, but yeah, I think it was more about kind of having a cool coffee table book that, you know, you could just have there and a bunch of cool photos and things like that.
Yeah, no, that's cool, man. And it's nice to, even for this is the tie it together moment, but like even for as mindful as you try to be, as any of us try to be, you do a lot of stuff and you've done quite a lot over the course of your career up to this point. Yeah. A lot of it, I'm sure, is a blur. It's nice to like sit back and reflect a little bit in like a physical form.
Yeah, exactly. I think, you know, I definitely felt and still feel like I have a pretty damn good memory when it comes to events. And if someone's like, you played this show in Santa Barbara in 2017, and I'm like, oh, that was the Halloween show. I remember that. And I wore a spacesuit on stage or whatever, you know, like I'm pretty good. But over the years, like after like 8, 9, 10 years, it would be like, actually, maybe I don't know if I do remember that one. And like, I feel like for a while I was so good at knowing every single thing. And then I was like, oh, I do not remember that sometimes. So yeah, I feel like I definitely needed and wanted a little bit of physical like nostalgia to look through and just kind of have those memories.
For me, it gets tricky when it's like a place you go back to a few times and then you're like, wait, is that memory from like the second time I was there or the third time? Or you start combining them and like mixing elements of different memories.
Exactly. And I've been to every city and every big city in the US probably 10 times now. And so it's just, I don't know.
There anywhere you haven't been yet that you're trying to get to?
States. The only states I haven't played in are North and South Dakota. And I believe like New Hampshire, maybe.
Okay.
Or something.
Interesting. I feel like the Dakota, maybe. You could hit the Dakotas. Go hit Fargo.
I know Fargo has some. I don't know. I've just never gotten an offer to play there. So maybe at some point. But I've done Alaska, I've done Hawaii, I've done like Alabama and Arkansas, all the middle of the country ones, and which, you know, usually don't have a ton of events. And pretty much done them all. I was counting up the other day too. I think I was at like 32 countries or something like that. I've done shows in, which is also just insane to think about.
Wow. I love it, man. I love it. You still loving the road in general, like the travel aspect?
I do, honestly. I mean, I just love travel and I love food. And, you know, I did that whole like travel TV show even a couple of years back. And
I remember.
I feel like we talked about that like every 2 years and it was just slowly coming along.
I think we did,
It finally came out. It's done. It's on Paramount Plus. Go watch it, sample. But so cool, man. So I think I love food, huge foodie, and love traveling and just visiting new places. So I think also over the years I've just gotten the traveling pretty dialed. Now I'm just
you still able to get outside, do some hikes here and there?
I definitely am. I mean I love it whenever I can. I haven't had too many recently, but you know, I've got I think 3 of them planned right now. I got one for Switzerland this summer. I have one of my favorites in like Eastern Sierras in July, and then I have like a Channel Islands National Park one, which is like off the coast of LA. It's actually a quick one. That one's more of just like a fun camp, hike around an island and stuff, but the other 2 a little more backpacking. But I love that stuff. I've been trying to at least go to the gym and stay fit so that when I do have the opportunities to do it, I can go out. And I think next year will probably be a little bit, you know, I kind of plan to hopefully do like album, like hard ticket tour, like big summer, doing all those shows. And then like a year of writing music, doing club shows, doing festivals, not worrying about hard ticket events, planning the next year's events, and sort of giving myself this 1 year of each. And so I think this, right now I'm in the midst of album planning, getting fall tour starting and, announcing all that stuff and trying to do sort of like the busy year, investing in everything, making, putting money into extra stage production and just really going hard on, building the value. And then next year is a little bit more of back into the cave to kind of like scheme a little more and write more music and have a little more outside time or a little more family time and all that stuff.
Hey, I love it, man. I love it. I mean, it seems like you found a pretty good balance that's working for you. You're looking good, man. I haven't actually seen your face in like 2 years. You're looking good.
Thanks, man. You are as well, man. It's good to see you.
Oh, thanks, buddy.
Never had a moment of slow conversation. I feel like with you, always very easy to chat with. So
no, 100%, man. I look forward to every time we get to come and do this. It's like a really nice, like unique little friendship where we just get together like every 2 years and have this talk.
I love it, man. Yeah, I appreciate you having me on always.
No, dude, 100%. I appreciate you doing it, man. It's really nice. And I don't know if I have much more for you, man. This ruled. The album rules. I'm stoked to see what you're going to do with it with all the live shows.
Thank you, man. I am also stoked. Hopefully it all comes together. I think it will.
You know it will. It'll come together.
Yeah, of course.
All right, man. Well, have a great rest of your day. Good luck with all the calls.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Absolutely, man.
All right,
dude.
Peace, man.
Peace, man. Take care.